All right, folks. Thanks for coming to the Debian Cloud BoF. My name is Noah. I'm a member of the cloud team. We have a couple of other cloud team members here, and we're going to talk just a little bit today about sort of the state of things with regards to Debian in different cloud environments. Areas where people might be able to contribute to the cloud team, and also I'd really love to hear from anybody that is using Debian in the cloud today, like about what your experiences are and what you'd like out of the cloud team, what you'd like to if you'd like us to change anything about what we're doing, or if there's any way that we can make life easier for you as cloud users. And I'd also really be interested in brainstorming ideas for ways that that the cloud can help Debian. I am here today representing, in addition to Debian, I'm representing Microsoft as well. Microsoft recognizes that that Debian is a very popular distribution to use in the Azure cloud, and that it's worth maintaining a good relationship with the project and making sure that that Debian works really well. So that's something that that's one way that by supporting me being here and being at DebConf and participating and all that, that's one way that Microsoft is helping Debian, and that's great. And we're Microsoft is sponsoring Debian. But what other ways could Debian use cloud resources? What other ways could the cloud help Debian? So on my slide up here, I just have a couple of little quotes. I have, first there's, there is no cloud. It's just someone else's computer, which is kind of the point, actually. It's sort of a strange idea for a lot of us, but for a lot of our users, and a lot of cloud users, the idea that they don't need to own the computer is really a good thing. They don't, owning computers is hard. Dealing with the complete life cycle of hardware is hard. Fixing it when it breaks is hard. And so just sort of punting all of that up to some cloud service is great, and people really like that. And I think that's borne out in the success of cloud computing over the past decade or so. And then I've also got this this quote from Greg Hartman. If you're not familiar with him, he's one of the core Linux kernel developers, and he observes that the world's cloud systems run Debian. Debian literally powers the cloud. So as Debian developers, those are our users, and in the social contract is we prioritize our users, and so it is in our best interest as developers to think about how we can best serve people that are running Debian in the cloud, and so that's sort of one of the things that I want to talk about today, and sort of just talk through and all of that. So I'm going to give a little bit of just an overview of what the cloud team does for people that haven't been, sort of following our work over the past several years. The cloud team, as it exists today, was formed in 2016. Debian had a little bit of a presence in a couple of different cloud environments before. We did have OpenStack images, we did have some stuff on AWS, but it wasn't very well organized. In 2016, we all got together. There was an event hosted, a cloud sprint hosted at Google, and that was where we sort of got together and started planning how we can really improve things, and so since then, we standardized on a tool set for building our images. We started understanding what it was that we would need to do to have to publish our images to the commercial cloud providers, and started thinking through how we could have an official, formal business relationship with those cloud providers, so that we could be first-class citizens in their in their marketplaces and things like that. And so since then, for the past several Debian releases now, we've been publishing images to Azure and to AWS. We've been generating images for OpenStack that are downloadable from cloud.debian.org and can be used in many different environments. And we have configuration to build for Google's GCE, but we don't actually build the images; they build them themselves. But Debian is there in that cloud service as well. We build every day. We build something in the neighborhood of 100 or more different cloud images. We build every supported distribution. So right now it's Bullseye, Bookworm, Trixie, and SID. We build for several different architectures. So we build for ARM64, AMD 64, RISC-V, PowerPC 64. I think that's all of them. For the clouds that support those, like we don't build RISC-V for AWS or something because they don't have that kind of hardware. And we, yeah, probably. And we build for the stable releases, Bullseye and Bookworm, we build with the standard kernel and with the backports kernel as well. So if you need newer kernel features, we have images pre-built for those. We register all those images with Azure and AWS. So we're publishing images all the time. Our Salsa, like GitLab CI configuration is monstrous. Like it's really big. It's quite possibly the biggest on Salsa right now. And then when there's a release, so the daily images are not normally the ones that people use. We expect people to use release images instead. Those are published much less frequently. That happens like whenever a point release happens. So recently we released Bookworm 12.6, that triggered new images. So we're sort of participating in the release process within Debian. We update the images whenever a DSA changes something that's on the images that we publish. So if the kernel gets a security update, or if libc or OpenSSL or something like that, we release new images. All of this is automated, so it's really just we click a button and watch a pipeline run. So that's pretty cool. What else? We maintain a bunch of packages. So a bunch of packages mostly related to the integration of Debian into the cloud environments. So if there are any agents that need to run, so on Azure, there's an agent that runs that takes part in the provisioning process for configuring a VM when it launches. Cloud init is a process that runs at boot on a number of different cloud services that provides a configuration interface that lets you, as a user, pass configuration data and configure the machine, the virtual machine, as you want at launch. So that's an integral part of sort of the cloud user experience, and that's one of the packages we maintain. There are a bunch of other ones related to that. And so we maintain all those packages. We maintain a number of SDKs and CLI tools for interfacing with different clouds. And we also are responsible for, we have a couple of DPL delegations that are responsible for actually engaging with the cloud services themselves on like sort of an official business level. They can they can accept user agreements and that sort of thing on behalf of the project and sort of make decisions about how Debian engages with those services. So that's kind of an overview of what we do. We are, we publish to the marketplace of Azure and AWS, and so through those channels, we learn a little bit about how much people are using Debian in the different cloud environments. And I mean, it's pretty cool. There's a lot of people out there that are using our stuff. We don't know what they're doing. We don't actually get a lot of feedback from them. I assume things work pretty well, but part of why I want to have this BoF is because maybe some of you are the people that are using them. I'd love to know, how things are going. I assume that no news is good news, and if we're not hearing anything, then everybody's happy, but maybe I'm wrong. So definitely tell me if there's something that's not going well. Yeah, so that's all I sort of wanted to talk about to introduce things. On my slide here, somewhere maybe, I should have just some links where you can go and read about, look at some of the packages that we support, some of the tools that we use, and things like that. I have our IRC channel and our mailing list listed as well. So, feel free to subscribe to the mailing list, join the channel, talk to us, whatever. And yeah, everything else is, I'd like to hear from you. Does anybody have anything they'd like to talk about or issues they have or anything? Yeah.
Maybe one remark, if you go on the marketplaces and you just search for Debian, not everything that is called Debian or whatever is the official, original Debian image. I think, do you know the names of the providers, or how is it called in the marketplaces?
Yeah.
So you should keep an eye on it if this is really from the Debian project and not someone else saying, oh, I provide a Debian image, whatever there's in. So this was also the reason why we defined some rules and say we want to provide official Debian images. These images are built on Debian-controlled machines, and are they signed by us somewhere?
So signing the actual image files themselves is not something we do yet. And that would be, people have definitely asked for that. It would be very good for us to do. That would be a really interesting thing for someone to work on. We need to figure out, if we're going to sign the images, we need to figure out what key we use and where that key is stored. And I think DSA can help with that. We just need to actually commit to doing it and do work.
We provide SHA-256 at least.
Yes.
That's not enough, but that's already something.
That's right. If we sign that would be great. Yep.
There's a micro. Andrew.
Hi, so my question is a bit tangential. It's so I was wondering, you've been talking about working with partners and all these things. I know that some teams or some individual have access to some cloud credits for some Debian work. And I was wondering, what was the status on trying to making this more maybe official?
Yeah.
Having like a single point of entry where you could go and say, I have this neat project, I would need this amount of resource, and then somebody else could say, oh yeah, at the moment I feel you have to know the right people and ask the right question to get this. And a good example of this would be, for example, you've mentioned it, Salsa CI.
Yeah.
Salsa CI at the moment runs on Google Cloud. It's managed by the Salsa team. It's not great. The machines take a long time to run. For example, for Lintian, it can take up to 2 hours to run a test, whereas on my machine it takes 2 minutes.
Right.
So if we were able to have like a clear entry point for this, it would be really great.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's actually an area of sort of ambiguity, I guess, in our relationship with the cloud services. We don't have we have accounts with Azure and with AWS. And we have resources that we get as part of having those accounts, but we don't really know, and we don't pay the bill, right? So somebody else assumes all of that responsibility. We don't know where, there's somewhere up there, there's got to be a limit to how much we can spend before they start asking questions about why they're paying us. Our AWS bill right now would be monstrous if we actually saw it. It would be really big. I don't know how much. I don't know how much we can use. We've never actually gotten a good answer from the cloud services about what we can use for resources. So maybe we can start throwing all of Salsa at one of the clouds. I don't know. They might just say, hey, that's terrible, and turn us off. I don't think so, but they might. So we need to work that out, and we need to get an actual commitment from some cloud service. So I work for Microsoft. I'll see what I can do about answering that. I'm relatively new at Microsoft, but they specifically hired me to make Debian well supported and to support Debian and things like that. So this is a thing that I can do as part of my job, but it isn't a thing that has happened yet.
I have a question. Are you only using AWS and Azure cloud environments, or are you running some Debian things on different cloud environments where
well, for personal purposes, I would never use AWS or Azure for cost reasons. I currently have an account on DigitalOcean, and for small tryouts, it works well.
I know DigitalOcean uses the generic image or the OpenStack image, it's the same thing. So they are compatible with DigitalOcean. So you must be using the official Debian image. And what's you're Russian, right?
Let's say.
So Andre is not here. I was wondering what kind of cloud provider there is in that part of the world. And if any, there's no Chinese here. I would also like to know what's the situation in Ali Cloud, for example.
Well,
I don't know if someone can answer.
In Russia, there is, for example, Selectel. They also offer Debian, and it also works there. And they have a really nice and simple cloud console. So, yeah, but okay, please don't treat me as Russian from now on. So they also use generic, I think they use the generic image, but I cannot confirm. If there is any way to check if the provider uses a generic image, I can run that. But they also allow uploading custom QCode images, and so you can definitely use the official image with Selectel.
There's a file on the images that we generate, Etsy cloud release, that will, it won't necessarily tell you that it is something that we generated, but it is dropped by our tooling that does the generation. So it could be that they are generating their own images using our tooling, which is what Google does. But if that file exists, that should tell you something about the image that you're running.
So I wanted to ask a question.
Oh, yes.
Okay. I'm using VPS services from Sakura Internet in Japan, and I assume they were using Debian installer and not the full image, but I could be wrong. How can you tell if we're using the image?
Again, the Etsy cloud release file is going to tell you if it was built by our tooling, and that'll tell you the version, which contains a number that's generated by Salsa, by GitLab when it runs. And so that will indicate what image it is and when it was built. Again, it's not definitive that we built that image. So, if you do want to be sure, you can go to cloud.debian.org and download the image file and register it with your cloud service, and then you know exactly where it came from.
So if it's an OpenStack cloud provider, you can check the SHA-256. It's displayed when you do image show. I don't know for your specific cloud provider if they also display the CRC file, the CRC of the image, but that could be a way to check for it.
Another question back. Do you have a
So
microphone?
yeah, another question I had. I don't use cloud images anymore because I used to do that in another life. But I know that I often was dropped into like a GUI where I had to click and install it, like for say a Debian image. I could never be sure if that image had been modified afterwards. What would be really, really neat would be to have a tool that I could install on that machine, on a fresh install of that machine, that I could run, and it could give me a diff of what's, like, compare this image to the official OpenStack image and give me a diff of that. So I don't know how possible that would be, but it would be really great. That way people could know, say, OVH has been modifying my image to include this, this, and so I should be aware of that, or these kind of things. It would be really great.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is actually fairly reasonable to do. The cloud release file, because it contains like the specific version of the image that that backs that virtual machine, and the image is downloadable from cloud.debian.org, it should be very easy to cross-check the contents of a given virtual machine or a given image in the cloud service with the authoritative image that we published. So yeah, that sort of thing would be interesting tooling to build. So.
Is there a tool named BertDeep? Maybe there is a tool named BertDeep. Then we can compare two QCount images. We can compare.
Diffoscope also knows how to deal with disk images, so it's possible to just grab, you could DD the content of a virtual machine image, or the backing disk from a virtual machine image, and grab the contents, grab the image from our download site and use Diffoscope. That's another way to compare. That actually reminds me that another interesting thing for us to do would be to try and make our image builds reproducible, because they're not reproducible right now. There's a lot of stuff that goes on, like the creation of a file system. I don't know with certainty if you can make the ext4 file system creation process reproducible. I suspect that you can, but I have not actually tried it yet. And then there's a bunch of other stuff that happens when we're building the image, where we'll drop files onto the file system and things like that. And there aren't too many of those, but there are a few where we'll install provider-specific configuration or something like that, and that process is also not reproducible. That the timestamps on those files would be different across different runs. So.
Well, you kind of answered my question. My question was, how do you reproduce these images? Is there a tool or instructions provided in one of these links? So
the tooling that the tooling that we use to build the images is in the Cloud Images repository. And so that tooling is it's a bunch of Python. Thank you. Thank you. So the images are built by Phi, the fully automatic installer, and there's a bunch of Python code that wraps around that and reads from some configuration, generates the Phi command line, and invokes that. And that's all managed by pipelines. So from a sort of functional point of view, the inputs are known and are and we control them, and they're reproducible in that sense. But the images are not bit for bit reproducible.
Okay, there is no DC cloud or selector, actually.
Okay, interesting. So they may be generating their own. So the point, he didn't have a microphone, but what he said is that there's no, on the images that he's running, this is on DigitalOcean?
No, selector.
On what?
Selector.
Oh, okay. On his cloud service, there is no Etsy cloud release file. So it may be that, seems like they're getting their images or generating their images from something other than us. So I don't know. It might be interesting to figure out how they're building them. They might be doing their own thing.
Hey, here. So basically, I was working for a company that we used to run 10,000 plus bare metal servers, and on top of that, a lot of virtual machines. And I had two questions to ask. One is a smaller one. So when I was trying to, when Debian 12 was released for the cloud images, I found that there was some inconsistency with what the Google team released and what the cloud team released. I found that Google team decided to use the crony for timekeeping, whereas the cloud team moved to systemd timesync.
That's right. Yep.
So,
Yep.
I mean,
we actually used to use to install crony. And
but in 12, we moved to systemd timesync. And I wanted to know, I mean, do we have any? I mean, they probably have full control over the images once they get that. But is there any, anything we can do about it or like that?
Yeah. So Google in particular, they build their own images. They use our tooling, but they want to control the build themselves. And they do collaborate with us. They have come to several of the in-person cloud sprints that we've done, and they do come to our regular monthly meetings on Jitsi that we have. So they are active, and they are, I think, trying to be good citizens. If they choose to use crony on their service, for the most part, if they think that crony is the right thing to use on GCE, I don't think it's unreasonable for them to do that. And so, as long as they're not doing anything that's really egregiously weird, I wouldn't worry too much about that particular part of it. It's sort of at their discretion.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what they can do, what suits best for them. But the second question that I wanted to get to was, I mean, first of all, thanks for the effort of the team that we were able to run these mini systems. The second thing was I wanted to understand what sort of testing the images goes through. Mm-hmm. So if I wanted to, due to this problem, if I wanted to build my own set of systems on, so I did have some testing running, but I was not happy with that. So I wanted to know what sort of testing the cloud team does.
So most of our testing is sort of. Was that? Yeah. Let me just bring something up, and I'll get it bigger when it's something to see. So most of our testing happens at the in the build stage. Let me just get the whole log. So this is a Salsa build log from a recent build. This just finished within the past hour or two, probably. And we can see, it's a little bit of a mess, but so we actually do a bunch of testing of the content. So we have some sort of static testing. You can't really see it. Just take my word for it. You can go look at the links if you want and dig into the image build logs if you'd like to see it and look at the sources. Most of the images right now we don't, so when we register an image with Azure or AWS, or when we generate the generic images that are usable in OpenStack and elsewhere, we don't actually typically boot those. So like doing an actual runtime test would be worth doing. That's for the daily images. When doing a release of our images, we typically do verify that the candidate images boot to running as reported by systemd, and that they have no pending package updates. That's the extent of the runtime testing that we typically do, though. So there's room for improvement.
Why did we move out of Crony to systemd timesync?
With Bookworm.
What's the reason?
It's like fewer packages. Systemd is there already.
Yeah, but Crony is so much better.
Crony is more, as with many of the systemd components, like they're great sort of defaults, but certainly if you're going to run a time server or something, you're not going to do that, I don't think, with timesyncd. You're going to do that with Crony or something like that. I think for basic synchronization of a single host's clock, I think that timesyncd is sufficient.
We have a rule with the package that we select that we want to be as close to the normal Debian installation as possible. But sure, in a cloud environment, you need some other packages, and that's a trade-off. So,
of NetPlan? Yeah, it's a joke. Huh?
So will it make sense? It makes sense for single systems. But when you have timesyncd, it's a client-based approach. So in a cloud system, you have like multiple systems running. So you can have some other server somewhere that's the server component, and we have all the clients. So maybe that's systemd, timesyncd works better in that case. I mean, I'm just putting out a guess.
another question, any other cloud environments that people are using? We heard DigitalOcean, other cloud environments?
Hello, Scaleway, and they have RIS5 as well. They have it in the cloud. Yeah.
Stack as well.
And so we're already generating those images. Like,
Yeah.
they're there. You can run them.
Actually, I wanted to ask something about where do you see the gaps in the team and the work that you see that it needs to be done, and if you feel under-resourced or need more effort, or everything works well and it's fine, or where do you see the gaps, essentially?
Yeah. We have ideas for ways that we can improve our image build system. So right now, like, it all works. Like the pipeline that we run on Salsa, it's good about, it builds our images and it's, it totally works. There's things that we'd like to do in the future that could probably make things faster and maybe more reliable. So, for example, all of our builds happen in custom GitLab runners, and for architectures that are not AMD 64, they're actually using QEMU with software emulation, which is not super fast. So thinking of some better way to deal with that would be, kind of interesting. The testing stuff that we talked about, like building automated testing, would be totally, very much worthwhile. And then, I don't know. One thing I'd love to see is I'd like to see something that makes it easier for people to build their own customized cloud images that are based on the ones that we build. So like Thomas has Phi.me, which is a service for generating like a custom ISO image for a live CD, or something like that for the cloud would be really neat, I think.
I think what we should do at some point, we already discussed that, is transform our pipelines into a software that could be installed in Debian.
Yeah, and it's not difficult to take our configuration and like if you clone the Debian Cloud Images repository and install the dependencies, like you basically just type make and it'll go off and build an image. But being able to have a pipeline like this or something that's more automated, that can do a bunch of different builds and things like that would be, I think, worthwhile for a number of different reasons. It'd be useful for people that want to build images for their own cloud, maybe that want to build custom images themselves with infrastructure that they host, any number of different reasons. So I think that would be a really interesting project to work on.
So my impression is that the technique of building the images works really fine. We have some ideas to how to improve it, or we improved it a little bit. What occurred several times was if we have built the image and want to upload it to the cloud provider, that there are some problems because you need this cloud account, and then the cloud providers had changed some things. So is this the right impression I have? That we had several problems because the cloud provider changed something with the accounts, and then it's very hard to get in contact who can fix this at the cloud providers, and why did they fix it or broke it again, and the upload of our images that are ready. So they are built, they are ready, we want to upload it, and then, doesn't work.
Yeah. I want to talk about that a little bit, not on camera, because I don't want to throw anybody under a bus.
So what? Because you asked, do we have problems or you need more resources? So I would say we are fine. It works fine, but to have better contact or a closer contact to the cloud providers, to certain people that may say, oh, we are changing this, or we had changed this or that would be good. And that really takes time, and these are not the technical things.
Yeah, at the same time, I mean, I work for one of the cloud providers. Like, I don't know that it gets much closer than that, right? In terms of being able to, contact the right people, things still go wrong. So, yeah.
So even we have very good contacts to the cloud providers, we had sometimes problems at those parts.
Yeah. And we do, there are things that, like, you can see up here, there's a failed job in this pipeline. In theory, like, that was an upload job to one of the cloud services. In theory, that our code could handle that better. So there's things like that are sort of smaller, probably self-contained problems to work on. That pretty much anybody could pick up. That would probably be, that would be a matter of somebody knowing Python and maybe knowing a little bit about the cloud APIs and things like that, but not anything super crazy.
And I still have the issue that we are nicer with the most rich cloud providers than we are with the others, meaning that we upload the image to their cloud as a favor, but we don't have any tool to provide to people running their own cloud to do that same thing. So, of course, I'm guilty of not writing such a tool, but yeah.
To be fair, like, Microsoft and AWS have engaged with us as part of, to do all of this. So, we had somebody from DigitalOcean at one of our cloud sprints, but they haven't come back. Maybe that just means that they're happy with what we do and they're happy to download it themselves.
That person is not working at DigitalOcean anymore.
Right. But the company itself has not seen reason to send somebody else. And I think it would be cool to get more people actually involved from the cloud services, from DigitalOcean, from Linode, and others who can come and are interested in collaborating with us on the image builds, on the pipeline, on all the automation around it, on testing it on in their infrastructure, all that sort of stuff. It would be great.
So another thing we have been discussing between OpenStack providers is that currently there's what we call the extra specs in the OpenStack images. It's like we also call it properties. So these properties aren't standard between OpenStack providers, and you've got all sorts of standards that OpenStack cloud providers are applying. And I've been trying to work with each of them, to have it standardized with properties that would be all the same, names that would be all the same, and that's also an ongoing work that I've been working on, which I haven't communicated with the rest of the cloud team. And yeah, probably a part of the thing would be having that tool so that it would upload to these providers. So that could also maybe work for DigitalOcean. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So I think we are at time. So if anybody wants to continue conversations or talk about other things related to this, by all means, talk to me or Thomas or Thomas. Thank you.